my spirit's with you, and I'm hoping, Secretary Perdue, that when you come to Raleigh today, I can meet with you briefly before you head west. I would look forward to doing that.
Well, I look forward to it as well, Governor. I'm sorry that the weather precluded us here for coming in this morning, but when we get to Raleigh, we'll try to visit for a while. But we've been well greeted down here. Your community at Duplin County has been really hospitable in light of the circumstances. It was just encouraging, again, inspiring to see people helping people, and that's why we're here, to be part of that. The local team, that's where any kind of disaster response really starts, and we just want to be assets for your state and for the local folks here. So we appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Well, I look forward to listening to the briefing, and I will tell you, I have visited on-the-ground farms in Sampson, Jones, Scotland counties, and I've flown over a lot of them, and if it have, and on the back of Matthew just 23 months ago has just been a double gut punch for farmers. A lot of cotton destroyed, and peanuts and potatoes really hadn't had a chance to be dug up yet. So we know that there's going to be some loss there. We know about the animal livestock loss, and so this is going to be significant. A lot of our farmers are leveraged to the hilt because of the last few years, and anything we can do as we try to help them, I think it's going to take more than just a farm bill. I believe that we need to find some way to look at the cumulative damage over the last few years to try to help these farmers. And we want to work with you from the state perspective. We appreciate you coming to North Carolina to hear about the plight of our farmers. Agriculture is our #1 economic driver. We know that there are a lot of farms and churches and businesses and homes underwater. But I'll tell you this, Mr. Secretary, North Carolinians are resilient and strong. We're going to appreciate all the help we can get, but we're going to make it through this, no question.
Well, you mentioned something that I know is on the minds of Congressman Rouser here, the cumulative effect from 15, 16, 17 was pretty good, but now 18. That's we were able to do the program last year for the people that were hit at the islands, as well as Texas and Louisiana last year. But the cumulative effect here in the Carolinas, both North and South Carolina, over the flooding, I don't know it even got named in 15, but it was pretty bad in the Carolinas then, and certainly 6 Matthew, and I guess last year you got spared. But the 3 out of 4 years has been pretty rough. But again, we're here. You're right. I don't know any more resilient people. They're used to it, but the weather's been rough.
We appreciated the president coming down. We appreciate you coming down. We know that this is going to take a significant coordinated response from local, state, and federal. And I'll just put my phone on mute and listen to you guys. But hello to my friends in Duplin County, Sheriff Wallace, and the rest of you. And I appreciate the opportunity to call in and listen this morning, and look forward, Mr. Secretary, to seeing you when you get to Raleigh today.
Thank you for joining us by phone, Governor.
We've gotten a little off of the agenda, but that's normal for me. But I do want to welcome everybody here today. This is, I think, an especially important meeting. And while I would like to say, Mr. Secretary, that we would rather have you under other circumstances, it is important that we have you here. You know that ag drives North Carolina, especially rural North Carolina, about $87 billion in economic impact, and we're wounded right now. There's no question. As I have flown over eastern North Carolina and seen the damage, not only to agricultural crops and to houses, businesses, you know, it's going to take a while to recover, and we've got to have all the partners that we can have to be able to do that. We are a state that believes in neighbor helping neighbor, and it's heartwarming to see the things that have happened in this recovery effort. But there comes a time when everybody in the neighborhood is under the same circumstance. It takes a little outside help to get everybody back on their feet, and I think that's where we are today. There have been times when neighbors could not even get to neighbors because of all the roads. I think we've got over 600 roads that are still closed in North Carolina, so transportation has been very difficult in the recovery effort, and especially when you try to get to farms to help people, and the roads are gone. So we've had to do a lot of kind of innovative ways to help rescue not only livestock, but rescue people. And I try to let everybody understand that when you hear an evacuation order, farmers can't leave. They've got responsibilities with livestock and their farm, and then they have to deal with it, and they're in the same flooded conditions. Their houses are flooded, their farms are flooded, so it's been a tough situation. We will recover because of the grit of the people of North Carolina and their will to go forward. So you being here is especially important to us, and I can't thank you enough for taking the time to come to North Carolina. And I think you'll see some of the things here in this briefing that we're doing at the state, and hope we can be very innovative in trying to figure out what kind of federal help that we can get to get everybody back on their feet. And you mentioning the cumulative effect, that is going to be probably the hardest thing to recover from. 3 out of 4 years, our farmers have basically paid to go to work every day, and you can't do that for so long. So we welcome you and thank you for being here. We welcome Ray back to North Carolina. So I'll turn it over to you for some more comments, and then we'll get into additional comments in the presentation.
Well, thank you again, Commissioners. I indicated with the Governor, the good thing about disaster relief and recovery is it begins locally. I mean, with your local responders, and those are always great. We come in over the top in assistance, and that's our role, not to come in and tell you how to do things. I think FEMA has learned a lot, unfortunately, over the last few years, going all the way back to Katrina and certainly last year. I understand, I know at USDA we were pre-positioned in a much better structure this year with Forestry Service and others, and being helped. But the good news about North Carolina people is that they don't wait around for somebody to come pick them up or help them out. And that's where we can be most effective from the federal response, is being able to offer assistance, sometimes funding, to do the things that need to be done. So I appreciate all these interested parties here this morning, and appreciate Congressman joining us here today. So I'm going to sit and listen. That's what we're going to listen and look and listen, and make sure we deploy our people with an assistance mentality about how we can help you all be most effective in what you're already doing a good job of, and that's the recovery phase of that. I'm pleasantly surprised that it could have been much worse. We know that, and but you all did a great job in preparing our facilities. I know the farmers were on top of it with the lagoons and other things that there. Sadly, the media always looks for those kind of stories based on the highlight of what's happening in North Carolina prior to this. But I'm really proud of the agriculturalists and the livestock farmers, both poultry and hogs here, for the way they prepared and the way they've cared for their animals. I saw a great video on the way up here this morning where the Forest Service was getting diesel fuel to some homes that were cut off there that could run generators and keep these animals alive. So it's a good effort, and we're proud to be part of it, and I appreciate all of you, both the state legislators and the people involved, and locally, state and federal here. So I look forward to visiting and hearing, and we'll be happy to respond or comment on anything that needs to be.
I think preparedness was a key in this not being any worse than it could have been. The governor actually put a state of emergency in about a week out, and with the declaration on that he made through executive order on agriculture. It gave our farmers time to get some crops out of the field, but especially gave notice to our livestock farmers that you know, they needed to prepare. And you know, I know there's been a lot of stories out there, but you know, I can't say enough about the preparedness of the livestock industry and the things that they did, moving animals, preparing lagoons, and in the end, we had three lagoons that breached. That's all. We had a few others that had problems, but the truth of the matter is, when you've got 3,300 lagoons and probably no more than 20 had any kind of problem, you need to get an award. I mean, if you look at the percentages, that's absolutely amazing. So our livestock industry did it right, and we're very proud of the effort that was put forth and the result that came out of that.
Good.
David?
Well, Mr. Secretary, thank you for coming. In fact, just so everybody knows, I think I've gotten a call from just about every cabinet member in the last 6, 7, 8 days. And of course, the president was here just the other day, and had a great visit with him. And by the way, he supports you just as much and just as strongly as all of us here at the table do. And really, really appreciate the work that you're doing. I will mention here now what I mentioned to him publicly and privately, and that is, you know, we're going to need all the help we can get, especially from a regulatory flexibility standpoint, you know, emergency funding, you know, whatever we can come up with creatively, because there's just a significant need. You got a lot of folks all throughout my congressional district, which you're in, obviously, right here. Got a lot of folks throughout this district that suffered tremendously under Matthew, suffering obviously now. And of course, as we all know, agriculture is really taking it on the chin overall, nationally as well, the last 4 or 5 years. And so it's a double whammy, so to speak, here. And so there are a lot of folks that are hurting, and we need to be as creative as we possibly can. Obviously, from the legislative side, we're going to do everything that we can. Timing and election season and all of that gets in the way a little bit in terms of putting things together here in the next 3 or 4 weeks. But certainly, we're going to be back after the election, and you know, working on a final, probably supplemental of some sort, you know, at the end of the year. But look forward to working with you hand in hand on this, and just really appreciate you being here. One thing, and I'll stress it with you, and I stressed it with the president publicly and privately as well, and that is all these creeks, streams, rivers, they're just gunked up with everything to get out of here when it doesn't have anywhere to go. And so, you know, you got all kinds of EPA rules and other regulations that keep you from doing the things that you need to do. You know, in the good old days, you just take a stick of dynamite and take care of business. It's not that simple this day and time. But anything we can do to have some type of maybe emergency declaration to get rid of some of these impediments that prevent us, you know, from cleaning out these rivers, streams, creeks, etc., so the water can get out of here. That would help a lot.
Well, that's one of the things that our Natural Conservation Resource Service does very well, working with our local community on stream restoration, and we're going to be given all the flexibility the law allows, and probably pushing the envelope as far as doing the right thing that way, and maybe asking for forgiveness later on if that's the case. But we want to do things right and do things well, but in these kind of emergencies, and it does need some relief, and we'll be happy to work with you on that. I want to say one other thing before I meant to say it earlier, but you know, the Duplin County Airport here, for your local leaders, it's always a challenge to make sure your airports are funded well, but this is a great front door to the community. They were good yesterday when we flew in, and it's just the facilities here to be able to host something like this, it's a challenge. But for you state folks and that help to fund airports and airport facilities, this is a really bright spot. It's a beautiful front door to the community coming down on something like this. You know, you hope never to have to use it like that, but just like today, it's a great facility being able to meet here and do that. They've been just as good personally as the facility is too, so I want to mention that.
They absolutely have. We have flown a lot of missions out of this airport with the Forest Service, and there's discussion about this airport possibly being the home of the Forest Service aircraft in this area in the future. So we are certainly glad that you recognize that, and certainly thank the people here at Duplin County Airport for their accommodations. And I apologize for addressing you as David. It's Congressman David Rouser, but David and I have been friends so long, it's just natural.
Hey, all my best friends call me Rouser, so just Rouser's good enough.
Senator Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Mr. Secretary, thank you for coming. We really appreciate it because, as you well know, I mean, you're not oblivious to the fact of how bad shape ag has been in nationally for the last several years. And, you know, this basically down here has been devastating. I mean, there's going to be billions of dollars of crop damages. I mean, it's going to take a long time to even figure out what kind of crop damages there is. But I mean, we appreciate any assistance, you know, that USDA can do. And you also mentioned NCRS, and I mean, that is vital. I mean, NCRS over the years, and I don't mean to be critical of anyone, has sort of let us down in trying to keep these streams and these tributaries cleaned out. I mean, it hasn't been done in decades. And I think that's part of the issue we've seen in the last two hurricanes with Matthew and, you know, Florence now. This massive amount of flooding we're seeing is taking place where flooding never historically has occurred. And I believe part of that is because we as a state and a nation have sort of let, you know, NCRS sort of fall by the wayside. And so to me, this is very vital that they come in and we start putting money to cleaning up these tributaries and these little creeks, and because it's just horrendous, especially since Hurricane Fran in 1996 when it came through. It just really devastated, and we've never cleaned up since. And so that to me needs definitely funding, Congressman Rouser. We need to make sure we get the funding there for that, and just folks are in dire straits. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. I mean, they were sort of, as the old saying goes, this could be the last nail in the coffin for a lot of agricultural people, especially in eastern North Carolina. And we need to do everything we can, and I know you will, and I appreciate you being here.
We've had this discussion about cleaning out the rivers and the creeks at the state level already this year, so we hope to forge a partnership with NRCS and be able to get this done. And part of the problem is North Carolina has moved so many people into the state over the past several years, and most of them are around the larger cities. But if you look at Raleigh westward, that I-85/40 corridor, so many rooftops, so much impervious surface, and all of that water has got to come through here. The 8 inches of water that fell at my farm outside of Greensboro sooner or later had to come here, and it showed up late. Flooding in Goldsboro was much worse Wednesday than it was Tuesday when I flew. So all that water has to come from the west through here, and it needs to move out of here, and cleaning these streams down is paramount.
So you've heard it 3 times now.
Well, I think, Mr. Secretary, once again, thank you for coming, and I think the governor, the commissioner, Senator Jackson, Congressman Rouser have said the only thing I would just reiterate is that our farmers' backs are against the wall. I've been with them last week, I was with them yesterday. Their backs are against the wall, and sooner or later, we have a lot of folks who say we're here to help you, we're going to help you, but they're going to need to know some numbers and some programs and some direction, because I can tell you there is a desperation out there. After 2016, they were counting on 18 Senator Jackson to come through at least to get out, and this is devastating. I mean, I can tell you some horror stories of farmers that I've talked to, and they're not going to make it. There's just no question they won't make it. And if we want to lose farmers in this state, Commissioner, we're in a good place to do that right now for a lot of financial reasons. I think what the senator said in terms of this with NRCS is EWP money. not only our farmers, but as I've moved across the state, just the inability to move around. Rural roads, of course, the state's going to have a response. I know the governor and the legislature have going to get together and do what they can do there. But there's the EQIP money. This is going to be crucial to get our folks back. Even with us, with an insurance company trying to get out to adjust a lot of these claims, we've got adjusters positioned, but they just can't get there, Commissioner. In certain places, just can't get there, and so it's a tough situation. And once again, all I can say is our farmers, particularly our livestock farmers, Commissioner, did one magnanimous job in preparing for this hurricane, topping off generators, pre-positioning feed. Our integrators pre-positioned feed across the rivers where they knew that the possibility of flooding, and I just can't compliment the industry, poultry and livestock industry, enough for what they did in preparation. And it's going to take all our shoulders to the wheel to make this come out. We're going to come out of it, but it's going to take some work.
Commissioner, may I add something, and Mr. Secretary, and since the governor's on the phone, I want to publicly thank the governor, as you did earlier, for putting that emergency declaration into place, because that saved probably billions of dollars in ag products that were able to get out of the field. So, Governor, thank you for doing that and working with Commissioner Troxler on it.
You got it.
Jimmy?
Well, I very much appreciate everyone being here today, and Secretary, thank you so much for coming. And it's sad, but a great effort so far. We've had great leadership from North Carolina officials, some sitting at this table. Commissioner, you've done a great job in leading us, so has the governor. And there's just so much concern about what's happening, and so much hurt for those who are hurting. And so one of the reassuring things in all this is communities coming together, people coming together to try to make a difference and to try to help. Last night, as I was coming down 40 to get here, I passed, must have been 3 vehicles from a Missouri disaster relief firm. And so we know that relief has come in from a lot of different places, and from churches and a lot of different people. And so that's just wonderful, because people come together in times like this. Our leadership comes together in times like this. And so while we're hurting for other people, it certainly is good to see the best in people to come out in times like this. Because often we're complaining about things that are happening, but this has been good to see a great response coming together. No doubt, we're going to need money, and I think we're making that message clear today. I appreciated the fact that Senator Jackson was asking the congressman for money, when we're always asking Senator Jackson for money. And,
Where do you think he gets his money? From the hard-working taxpayers of North Carolina. Thank you.
And I did have a good conversation with Tim Beard before we sat down here about money from NRCS that's going to come through, and the possibility of more if we need it. But thank you all so much for being here, and we look forward to the support that's going to come our way.
One of the amazing things that we have seen both in Matthew and now Florence is our faith-based organization stepping forward and really helping people. The Baptist men have been an amazing asset. The group I think that Jimmy was speaking about is a Baptist organization out of Missouri, and I've heard that we have Baptist men in here from Tennessee, all the surrounding states. So that is especially rewarding to see that type of outreach, and we certainly do appreciate everything that they're doing. Jimmy?
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being here. This area is represented by Senator Jackson and myself, and thank you for your very kind comments relative to our facility here. George has done a great job as the airport manager here, and it is a wonderful front door. A wise man once said that adversity introduces a man to himself. Another wise person said that in our prosperity, friends know us. In our adversity, we know our friends. We perceive you to be a friend, and we're thankful for your efforts to help us out here. When Abraham Lincoln was asked to open up the 1859 Wisconsin State Agriculture Fair, he said a lot of things, but one of the things that has stuck with me, he said, when the inevitable conflicts between agriculture and other entities arise, the issues of the other entities should yield. This goes to the regulatory environment that we are under. Government has a propensity to cut red tape lengthwise. Occasionally, there are times when government needs to find a way to cut red tape vertically. And I think that's the essence of our message to you and to Congressman Rouser. We want to do it right. We're interested in doing things right that benefit all of the people of North Carolina. But there are times when we need to expedite the way we implement our regulations. And then, just thank you for being here, and I think that's about it.
Mr. Secretary, I'll go back to you. Do you have any additional comments before we have the presentation from Dr. Meckes and Joe Ritter?
No, we'd like to see the facts, obviously. I think it's understood that from Congressman Rouser and his colleagues in the Congress, as far as our executive branch, we're going to be absolutely follow Representative Jimmy's advice over the flexibility, and as I indicated earlier, we're going to do things legally, but we're going to do things as quickly and expeditiously and aggressively as possible in order to help people get back and restore.
We are especially proud that you, as a former governor, understand this, having been through it yourself, and there's nothing like experience in a situation like this. So we thank you for that and look forward to working with you. Governor, do you have any further comments?
I think you guys have covered it all. I'm really grateful for the fact that everybody's getting together here and working for solutions. And I look forward, Mr. Secretary, seeing you a little later today.
Thank you, sir.
All right, I'm going to call on Dr. Meckes and Joe Ritter now for kind of an update on the animal response that we've had in the department and the things that we hope to get done.
Commissioner, Secretary, if you don't mind, I'll stand right here and we'll run through these slides very quickly. Henry, go ahead, that first slide. So we keenly anticipated the arrival of Hurricane Florence, much as we did with Matthew a couple years ago, and we're fortunate in North Carolina that we have a great working relationship with all of our agriculture sector. Within the veterinary division in the Department of Agriculture, we've got 150 folk, poultry, livestock. We run our laboratories, 4 diagnostic laboratories out of the veterinary division, and our animal welfare section. So we came together 8 days before the arrival of the storm and began discussing, not unlike we did with Matthew, movement of animals prior to the arrival of the storm, taking animals to market early, get them out of the sites that we know that we might have some flooding problems. And again, it's been mentioned by the commissioner, industry worked very well with us and began to move those animals. And as you'll see in a moment, the losses have been very minor relative to the total population of livestock and poultry in the state of North Carolina. Here you have a look at our farm cash receipts in North Carolina. 10,609 million. Livestock, dairy, and poultry represent 68% of that. And click that one more time. There we go. Swine, 2.1 billion. Poultry, 4.54 billion. And as you'll see in a moment, poultry's largest cash receipts in the country. As this 10 billion moves through our economy, it adds up to the $87 billion in our agriculture industry in the state of North Carolina, one of the leading in the country. So, as I said, we're first in poultry, U.S. total poultry, egg, and cash, 4.54 billion, and there's a breakdown of our broiler breeders, turkey production broilers, again, a significant part of the total $87 billion in agriculture in North Carolina. Turkeys were number 2 behind Minnesota. And next slide, there we are with 4th in broiler production in the country, 1st in broiler breeders. So again, no small endeavor here in North Carolina, the poultry industry. So on any given day, Secretary Perdue, we've got 400 million birds on the ground, poultry layers, and during the course of the year, we'll run through 855 million as they work their way through production and all the way to processing. So we've lost, as of yesterday, 4.1 million birds, so about 1% of our total population on the ground. So I would prefer to state that 99% of the birds in North Carolina are healthy and doing well. And we always have to maintain our perspective when we think about these numbers. Turkeys, only a small number, 147,000, and 3.9 million of the poultry. Next slide. And then here are the counties, and of course we're right in the heart of where all this has taken place, this southeastern quadrant of North Carolina. And you can see the number of farms, total number of farms affected, 57. We've got 211 houses that are going to have to be cleaned out, are going to have to be, the material within those houses composted or taken to landfill. So we've got a huge task ahead of us, and we're working closely, and Joe will speak to this in a minute, with folks to begin this process. As a matter of fact, we have people on the ground today beginning to assess some of these houses.
4 of those counties, by the way, Mr. Secretary, are in my district.
That's right. Yeah, and then
So
here's
about half of it.
Yeah. So here you can see a representation of these chickens and turkeys down in this quadrant of North Carolina. Go on to the next slide, Andrew. I want to speak to what took place during Florence. As you well know, obviously some of the houses were flooded. Some of the houses lost power. The generators failed, and so there were a variety of means by which the poultry died during the hurricane. But this was really a unique situation. A tornado touched down, destroyed part of this house, and it was deemed inappropriate to enter the house for our staff. So we've got probably more than any other state in the country teams that are able to foam these birds, depopulate these birds when we get into a situation like this. And during the avian influenza outbreak of 2015, Minnesota called us early March and said, we need help. We deployed 2 teams to Minnesota within 36 hours. They went to the largest turkey farm in the world and depopulated all the birds in 2.5 days. So we've got a crack group of our poultry technicians that are able to do this. And you can see they've opened the roof. They're spraying foam in there. Go to the next slide. And then this is the end result of this depopulation effort. Those birds are under that foam, and as the foam rises, their carbon dioxide levels increase, and they pass out and die. So the industry has been very appreciative of our efforts, and we've worked closely with them on this as we've gone forward. So there's our foam team. One of our foam teams just finished their work. Swine industry, we got 9 million pigs on the ground every day. We've lost so far, we know of 5,500 pigs. We've got, we're second in hog production in the country at 2.1 billion, and again, that moves on into our economy here in the state of North Carolina to be a significant part of that $87 billion. So number 2, behind Iowa, 9 million head, and that's the top 5 in pork production in the nation. Okay. So one other piece of all of this, Congressman Rouser, you'll see again, we've got the USDA FSIS inspected facilities that have been profoundly affected by this storm. The Smithfield processing plant at Tar Heel has 8,100 employees. They're at about 25% production as of last Friday, maybe a little bit more today, and primarily because their employees can't get to work. So we're looking forward to the waters receding and begin to bring all of our production facilities back into operation. And here's just a quick comparison for you on Hurricane Matthew. We lost 1.9 million birds, all of which were properly disposed of. The commissioner gave us our marching orders early. We will not create an environmental disaster associated with mass mortality of poultry and livestock, and we've been very successful in that, and will be successful with this effort with Hurricane Florence. Obviously significantly greater numbers, 4.1 million, over twice of what we lost here in Matthew, and significant economic losses as well. The poultry or the swine industry, I mentioned the loss of 5,500 swine. That compares to 2,800 during Hurricane Matthew in 2016. So again, industry very effective in moving critters out of harm's way and making certain to the best of their ability that we limit the losses and can return to normal production in short order. And I think that's my last slide. Joe Reardon is next.
Thank you, Dr. Meckes. Thank you, Secretary. Look forward to sharing a few thoughts with you. And Governor, thank you for being on the phone. As Dr. Meckes indicated, we went to work on this 8 days in advance of the storm in preparation. We were able to get the executive order from the governor to move stuff off the farms. So the commissioner directed us with 2 core tenets. One is to preserve public health. Dr. Meckes mentioned that, as well as the environment. So we did stand up a 1-800 number so that we could get any input from the farmers in the way of assistance that we provide. We've had over 200 calls already on that line. Dr. Meckes indicated in our operations center, the EOC, the department's EOC, we have over 100, close to now about 140 to 160 people working in that now, working in a variety of jobs to make sure that we are responding to our industry. You'll notice here in the top left that this is our Ag EOC. It's fully staffed, fully operational. We use the ICS structure that we get and work with our forestry partners to do that. But even in responding to the animal industry, you'll see in the far left there, we actually had some response that we could actually provide and get people out of harm's way. And so we were excited to be able to do that using our high water vehicles to do that. But the department has a very wide responsibility, so our food distribution division actually in the midst of this hurricane, and our response is distributing food throughout the entire state. So when you look at the Department of Agriculture, we had a broad breadth of responsibility to the public. Next. This is just some of the divisions, Mr. Secretary, that the department really gets deeply engaged with this. The Forestry Service bringing in their command structure as they do with forest fires, the ICS structure. It's just been tremendous, and all the logistics and support personnel as well as the infrastructure that they have. Dr. Meckes representing our veterinary division. Obviously they're deeply engaged with this across that entire perspective. The Department of Ag has a primary responsibility in food safety across the state, so even as of today we've actually done over 1,000 verifications in which we've either called or visited the facility to ensure that the foods being distributed or sold in our state is safe. Our agronomics division is really the boots on the ground to really give us that information of what's taking place as would result to crops across the state and the impact there. Our research stations deeply engaged. They know the community, they know the people. They really can give us that intel hands-on to get us out there working with this community. And there again, as you saw in the previous slide, food distribution, getting food into those communities, getting water, getting those supplies is vital. But we can't do this alone. We also depend on our partners. NC State University is a great partner, and Dr. Bonanno, if you've got a few comments there, I think that'd be great.
Great. I don't have any slides, I'm sorry. Thanks everyone for being here. Thank you for being here. Again, just a little update of what's going on from the partnership between the land-grant universities, obviously funded through USD NIFA, and the relationships in the state. So our agents provide critical knowledge networks, help at the local level. Our agents live in the communities. They're trusted, they know the producers, they understand local needs, and they're involved in these disasters before, during, and after the storm. Some of the examples of things that go on at the county level, a lot of phone calls were made to producers prior to the storm, especially people more likely to be in harm's way, identify several critical needs, how they can work with other agencies to minimize property loss. This allows more rapid evaluation of initial damages and assessments after the storm. Even though the university may close or county government may close, most of our people end up working in the county EOCs. And they're doing everything from manning both human and animal shelters, serving meals, and assisting rescue operations. We've coordinated and assisted in the creation of many animal supply points around the state distributing animal feed. We encourage ones that can be done by individuals in private industry, and a lot of those that have been set up in the equine industry have been set up that way. But we also have right now at least 4 that have been set up by extension, one in Sampson County, one in Lenore County. The county extension offices are nearby. We've even brought up 2 strike teams from Texas A&M to help us manage supply chain logistics and for procurement and distribution. So we've gotten donation of feed supplies, medicine. Actually, we get a pretty good supply of things. Right now, the problem is distribution because so many roads closed and people having the inability to get out. But we hope that'll continue and improve once the roads open more. We do a lot of coordination between Extension, FSA, Soil and Water, and FCS to first account for farmers and community safety, followed by identification and potentially critical areas that might need rapid responses. And that includes everything from helping people with their animals, grain bin storage, generator needs, and so forth. Another thing that our agents do is they work to collect county data for USDA FSA. So a lot of the numbers that come out of the counties are being put together by county extension agents that go to FSA. On the campus side, we've got a web page up. We try to put as much information as possible that includes everything from contact information, updates on carcass disposal, landfill availability, homeowner recovery, and so forth. We provide data to growers through commodity groups and directly. The other thing is that while our agents are working specifically with data for FSA, our faculty are more broad-based in kind of what they're looking at in terms of crop losses especially, and working with the commissioners, regional agronomists, and others to put together more broad-based estimates that can be used more publicly. Our economists provide data through the university regarding economic losses, especially for potential impacts to the state's economy from devastation to animal operation, increased costs associated with feeding and caring for livestock, and the need for help with disposal and composting of animal carcasses. One thing that's kind of off the radar screen is our aquaculture industry. We're second in the U.S. in aquaculture production. That's not really part of a lot of what's done within through NIFA and some of the agencies, but it's something that our faculty still work on. A lot of people on the coast have been benefited from the work that we've done there. And something that's out of the norm of agriculture, but still something that's very much part of extension, is a lot of our family consumer sciences agents working with homeowners, trying to help them identify needs, what to do with food in the homes, what to do with their houses themselves, and what can be fixed and what not fixed. And just from a wrap-up standpoint, our assets are heavily invested in people. As a result, partnerships even for us is critical. Our research stations and our research stations in the state are jointly owned. Some are owned by NCDA, some are owned by the university. We operate them together. And also the Forest Service that is run through the Commissioner's Office. They provide tangible assets for us to be able to respond to disasters. And the relationship among many partners in North Carolina, NC State, NCA&T State, NCDA, Farm Bureau, commodity groups, other NGOs and private industry allow us to more effectively meet the needs. And so working together is exactly what we need to be doing, and we're doing it.
Thank you.
Mr. Secretary, one thing I think Joe Reardon and Dr. Bonanno both mentioned it, you could help us if you certainly get the word out to our farmers, and we're trying to do that, get the word out that these payments, whatever it is, got to be based on numbers, and they've got to go to the FSA office and report the losses. If they don't go in and report the losses, then we don't have numbers to operate on. I think that's crucial that we get that out. And the second thing is a lot of our farmers are asking me on this trade mitigation package. It was going to be based on 2018 yields. If they don't have any yields, they're concerned about that. And so how are we going to do that in the Carolinas, where it's been a disaster, you know, in terms of how that's going to be, how that trade mitigation package is going to impact our growers. So those are questions that we're getting on a daily basis.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
I pulled out a couple of documents that we're going to share with our media partners here afterwards, but it talks about the emergency programs available. But you're exactly right. If farmers don't go to the Farm Service Agency Center in their area and report that, then the Livestock Indemnity Program and the EQIP and all the emergency water issues are not going to be implemented. But so it's going to require.
So you making a statement encouraging farmers here to go out and do that certainly is going to help us a lot to get that out.
The one thing that the commissioner has, and you saw in the previous slide, is it's an all hands on deck. And so what we looked at the department using the forestry resources is whether we needed to use high water vehicles that you'll see on the right hand side feeding the cattle, Mr. Secretary, on the left hand side using the boats. And you've heard about the impediments we had on transportation, getting through these flooded areas, getting to these farms. So it's really an all hands on deck. We were looking at using boats, we were looking at using high water vehicles, as well as air ops getting this feed into these animals. Next. And this is something that also we came across. This is a lady that had abandoned her home. The two animals were there. We came across those animals, and one of our first things was getting feed and getting these animals to higher ground. And that's just some of the response that we did using high water vehicles and even air ops. This is a photograph that captured this. When you look at Hurricane Matthew, the total numbers was about $400 million in economic loss, and you've heard everyone speak of this. We don't know what the total numbers are, but we know they'll be in the hundreds of million or $1 billion of total loss, really based on where each of those sweet potatoes, peanuts, cotton, tobacco, all those crops that we grow here, where they are in their stage of harvest from the fields. Okay. I know this is a slide that Dr. Mekas brought up, and you saw the percentage between livestock and crops. I will bring to your attention a lot of those crops are still in the field or were in the field prior to this hurricane and had not been harvested yet. So the numbers are going to be really significant. One of the major impediments we had, and it's been spoke to many times, we even saw it in coming down here, Highway 40 being shut. We just simply can't get in there. So to be able to service that animal industry, again, it's looking at every way to do that, whether it's boat, high-rise vehicle, or air ops to do that. This is something extremely important to us, and this really comes from the leadership of Commissioner Troxler. North Carolina and Matthew was the first state in the United States ever to work with FEMA to acquire the carbon to do the composting of the poultry industry, or actually would be any industry. So North Carolina led that effort back with Matthew, and we're building on that now. We are excited to say, Mr. Secretary, that FEMA did approve of the award application that we made on Saturday. And we will be looking to bring in to facilitate with the composting. We will also be offsetting the tipping fees. We know it's a tremendous cost getting that into the landfills, properly lined landfills. We will be composting, will be one of the #1 things that we do. And then when applicable, rendering as well. And so to give you some comparison, you heard it earlier, Matthew, we were talking like 1.8 million poultry. Today we're talking 4.1. You saw the percentages, and about 5,500 swine. Next. A little bit about this operation. There's 2 core tenets when we go into this, and it's important to FEMA. It fits with the mission of the Commissioner of Agriculture set for us. One is we're going to do everything we can to protect the environment and public health. This is what a poultry house looks like when it's flooded with water. So all the shavings and the beddings kind of rise to the top, and you can see the amount of water in there. So now you got to do something with that to preserve those 2 core tenets. Next slide. So what we do is we take equipment, we start bringing into that poultry house a lot of composting material, real fine sawdust, wood shavings, to really go in and have the maximum absorption we can to bind that moisture up inside that poultry house to begin to make us have a product that's workable. We're going to go from a soupy type product to something on the lines of an oatmeal type product. You begin to work it, you can see here, you're picking up that moisture, you're getting it into something that you can now bring out of that poultry house and compost. So you're working that in, It's kind of an art, if you will, so we'll have subject matter experts all along the way looking at where we are in composition, where we are in moisture, and those kind of things. Next. You can see the state of the material has changed by bringing that carbon in, working it. Now it's a product that we can bring out and put it in windrows so we can start the composting process. Two major things here, and these are the great slides. We've been able to work to preserve the environment. We've also been able to work to ensure public health. And at the end of the day, Mr. Secretary, we have a product now that can be used in the agriculture fields to add those nutrients back to the soil. So we kept it on the farm, we protected the environment, we work with our growers and our farmers to ensure public health at the same time, and we have a product that can be used. And actually, if you tested it on an agronomic rate, there'd really be no limits on how this is applied to the field. So it's really environmental friendly. We do verify temperatures throughout this, so we know at the end of the day we've had 140 degrees, 150 degrees. Really, all that's required is about 105 degrees over a 10-day period. We far exceed that by bringing the subject matter experts in. Okay. And at the end of the day, we hope to be able to show you this at some point. You can see the windrows from the compost that come out in Matthew. On the right-hand side is the success. Does a lot of things here, though. Not only can we get on the farm, we can bring this material, we can start this process, and we're real thankful for FEMA having the vision to approve this. The Commissioner of Agriculture here was first to lead us in this effort, and this is really on the other side of that, the next slide, why this is so important to our state. If this industry does not stand back up and does not get going again, and we're at 4 million birds, so if you do a little math, 4 times the 64 million, that's what a daily cost would be at 4 million birds. Every 4 days that this industry does not back up, it costs the state $1 million. So time is of the essence. Getting this award by FEMA, as the commissioner has told us, get people in the field. They are there today. We will start pulling stuff out of these houses and pushing compost in, hopefully this afternoon, and then we will begin that process. The quicker we can get back to a state of normalcy while protecting the environment and public health, utilizing this unique process, we think it works well with our industry, and we thank our federal partners for having the vision to approve this. Next. Commissioner, that wraps up our presentation. Dr. Meckles and I'd be glad to take any questions if anybody has them.
Any questions?
Could I add very, very briefly one very important footnote that we've talked about before? And what we've seen here shows magnificent effort. Our farmers need to stay out of the courtrooms as much as possible, and that's all I'll say about that.
I think also there was a lot of federal state partnerships demonstrated in all the things we do in food distribution that we do with USDA. In times like this, we're delivering food to people all over the state. FSIS, we operate under Talmadge-Aiken with meat inspection with USDA, and of course part of the things that we've got to do is get these facilities back online as quickly as possible, and you know, being able to move the material off the farms into the food supply is very important. So we're having to work hard to do that. FSA, great partners. FEMA has been absolutely wonderful for us to work with, and I will say that we had the first application in to FEMA, knowing what we went through in Matthew. We needed to be at the front of the line, and we've been able to do that. So our partnerships have been strong, they've been effective, and we've got to continue to do that. And Governor, if you're still on the line, he may have had to leave. But one of the things we probably are going to need to do as a state to do the composting and the things that we need to do to take care of the mortality is we're going to have to move massive amounts of carbon into North Carolina, with eastern North Carolina being a major source of the carbon material normally. Of course, we've got sawmills down, transportation is tough. So we anticipate having to move somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 tractor-trailer loads of carbon material into the state. So we may need to go to the governor for executive order on the movement of this carbon so that, like we did before the storm, that we expedite this because time is of the essence.
Mr. Commissioner, I can add a couple of things that come to mind. You know, under USDA, you've got a lot of different agencies, and you got one of the best right behind you over here with Rural Development. See Bob Chandler, our state director. He and his team do a great job. I will say that probably 8 out of the 10 things that I've run across as I travel throughout the district, rural development can be a huge help in. I'm very cognizant of that, given my previous history with rural development in the Bush administration, and so we'll be working to help support and buttress those efforts within that agency. The other component under one of the components under rural development obviously is housing, and I just want to mention this because it's just an observation of mine as I travel around the district in these rural areas. You have a lot of elderly folks that are in a home that they know nothing else other than the home they've been in their entire lives. In many cases, shingles are gone. They've had leakage into the house. They're sleeping in those conditions. You have COPD issues, pneumonia issues. They don't know where else to go. They don't have anywhere else to go. And if they had somewhere else to go, I'm not sure they would really want to leave anyway. But I'm quite concerned about the health impact for them. And this is something that I've discussed a little bit with Brock Long with FEMA. I've discussed it a little bit with Ben Carson at HUD. But there may be a real avenue there through rural housing to help with that as well. I'm just quite concerned about these elderly that are sleeping in these homes that have been pretty significantly damaged.
I visited an 84-year-old aunt I had yesterday, was in that with a mask on and
Yeah, and I just, the health, long-term health aspects of that I'm quite concerned about. So I just raise that as a point just so everybody can be thinking about it.
Well, you mentioned another agency, and USDA has a lot of assets there. Rural development is one of those, as far as we do a lot of rural housing loans and these kind of situations with loss of job or not being able to get it or plant shut down, and there are provisions there with flexibility. The other agencies you talked about, FSIS and the inspection, helping to get these plants have been shuttered back up functioning as well. The Food Nutrition Service on the front line of getting people fed initially, and then FSA, where our farmers are going to have to report these things, as well as NRCS. So there are a lot of tools with USDA, and we're happy to be partners in that. If we expect that we would be very willing and flexible partners. If you all find that's not the case, then Ray and I'd like to know about that.